Hello, my name is John Highfield, and I'm the inventor of the boat guard. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your interest in the boat guard. In this video, we're going to discuss how to install the boat guard on a pontoon boat, and what we're going to start with is a list of the tools you'll need to do the install. If you look over here, what you'll need is a cordless drill. You may need some spacers depending on what your rub rails look like, a hammer, a pair of tin snips, file, a ratchet with a 7/16 socket on it, a Phillips head screwdriver, a 7/16 wrench, a tape measure, regular pliers, needle nose pliers, 3/8 inch nut driver with a 2-inch extension on it, electrical tape, can of WD-40, and some thread locker. And I'd use the blue, not the red, because if you use the red, you'll never be able to get your screws back out again. You want to use the blue. Next, we're going to show you the components that make up the boat guard. What you'll receive with your boat guard kit is 2 side rails, one for either side of the boat, 2 side panels, those are the expanding frame panels, your handle, there will be a number of boat tubes, a boot, 2 bags of security straps, and your fabric cover. Now, before we begin the install, there's a couple things I'd like to go over before starting. There's nothing complicated about installing the boat guard, but there are a couple things that need to be exactly right to ensure that the cover works properly. And those things have to do with installing the side rails. They have to be centered at the proper location on either side of the deck over the boat's existing rub rail. They have to be level and perpendicular to the deck. Keep that in mind. We'll get into much more detail later with the installation, but the rail installation is the most important part of the installation process, and I can't stress enough the necessity of installing them properly. If you make a mistake, you may have to start over again. When beginning the install, the first thing you'll want to do is measure the length of your deck to decide the placement of your side rails. When measuring, don't include the transom in the back or the tune sticking out the front. You want to measure from the back corner of the boat all the way up to the front. Okay? You want to measure all the way up to the frontmost part of the boat. Now, this boat measures 17 foot 6 inches. Now, the covers are made to even numbers. They're made for a 20 foot boat, 18 foot boat, 22, 24, and 26 foot boat. So with this measuring 17 foot 6 inches, you're going to have to subtract that from the overall placement of how we decide where the rail is going to be. Now, what we'll do is we'll come to the back of the boat over here. Now, if this boat were exactly 18 feet, we'd measure 11.5 inches from the back, and we put a mark there. But since this boat is 17 foot 6 inches, we have to subtract 6 inches from the overall measurement, which brings it down to 5.5 inches. So we'll mark it 5.5 inches, and we'll start our rail right there. And now we're going to install the first side rail. It's helpful if you have 2 people do it, because one guy can hold the other end, but if you don't have 2 people, you can use a ladder to hold up the other side, and it's really easy to do. You just got to kind of keep the rail in there the same height as your rub rail. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you'll get your drill and you put your nut driver into it, and you want to get one of your self-drilling screws. So you place the back of your rail on the spot where you marked it, which was 5.5 inches from the back. Okay, you'll take your first self-drilling screw and you want to put it in this back hole and screw it in, not all the way, just enough to hold it up. Okay, the second screw you're going to want to install is in the very front, so you can have one at either end. Okay, you're going to want to make sure that your rub rail is level with the deck. Okay, before you screw it in, and then you grab your screwdriver here and screw that in, not all the way. The third screw that you're going to want to put in is right in the middle of it. Because these rails are so long, sometimes they have a tendency to sag. So what you're going to want to do is take one of these center screw holes and sure it up to where it's flat and level, and then put your next screw in. Okay, with that third screw, you should have everything perfectly level. So then what you'll do is you'll put in all the rest of the screws. When installing your rails, keep in mind the shape of your rub rail is also going to affect the way you install the rails. Different boats have different shaped rub rails, and as you can see, this boat is a Bennington. Bennington has flat rub rails. Okay, so you can just put the rail on there and drill it on. But some other pontoon boat manufacturers have, some of their rub rails are rounded, some have big bumpers on them, and we're able to install on all different rail profiles. Since the rails need to be level and square to the top of the deck, sometimes if the rub rail is sticking out, we'll use a spacer. So if you have a rounded rub rail and you need a spacer, so what we do is we'll put a spacer, before we screw that in, we'll put a spacer on the end of the screw and then screw it in, so the spacer is in between the rub rail and the actual boat cover rail. So, and what that does is it brings your rail out to get over the rounded area, and you can still keep your perpendicular to the deck, your level and squareness to the deck with that. But you'll have to put it on each one of them. Now, considering all that, once you get your rub rail placement, whether it's rounded or flat or whatever, once you get the 3 screws in it, the rub rail placement, you're pretty much good to go. Okay, then what you do next is you'll just fill in all the rest of these holes with screws. Now these screws are self-drilling, 2-inch, and what happens is they screw right from the right through the rail into the rub rail and then into the plywood of the deck. You've got 3/4 of an inch of plywood on your deck, and that's what these screw into. That's why it's such a tight fasten once you get them all in. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll just start at the back hole and screw them all in. Now keep notice that I'm not screwing them in all the way. I'm screwing them in to about 1/4 of an inch to where they're fully tight. Okay, we do that for a reason. And I'll tell you why here in a second. Okay, now even with Benningtons with their flat rub rails, they do have a rounded area at the top. So sometimes if you tighten these up fully, your rail will tilt in a little bit because of that rounded area. So what I like to do is, before I fully tighten these up, I'll put a few screws in the bottom part of this so that I know that it's going to be flat when I tighten it all up. See, and I'll do that by coming under here. Drilling that in under there, and look down under here just to make sure it's flat with the rub rail on the underneath. And you'll do that about every 2 feet. But what you'll do is you'll put one in the front and then you'll put one in the back so you can get both sides flat. Okay, you'll go all the way to the back. And look down it just to make sure everything is square. You just want to make sure the 2 rails are tight together, and then you put a 3rd one in the middle. Now you see how these 2 rails are nice and tight together here? That's what you want to have. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one about every 2 foot. Okay, now that you got all the bottom screws in here nice and tight, what you want to do is you want to tighten all these top screws up now. So what you'll do is you'll take your drill and put it on about 16 on the slip mechanism, so it only tightens so far. Okay, and then you'll just want to tighten each one of these up. Okay, now that you have all your top screws nice and tight up there, there's 2 remaining screws back here you have to hit. this is the first one we did, okay? And then there's 2 more holes to keep your mount nice and tight and straight to your boat. So you want to do each one of those and take them right in until they stop, okay? And then you'll want to tighten up your last one too. Okay. Now your first rail is on. Now do the same thing on the other side. After you get your rail fastened to the side of the boat, the first thing you're going to want to do is look down it. Okay? You want to get down here at the end and look down it and make sure everything is perfectly square with the deck. If you have a rub rail that's rounded, or if you have a rub rail that's got a big bumper in it and you have to spacer it out like we mentioned before, it's going to, you're going to have to make a little bit more sure that it is in the right spot. Okay, this is perfect right here. You can see how the rail is perfectly flat, perpendicular to the deck, and this is exactly what you want. Now there's a way to tell, once you put your side panels in, there's a way to tell if you've got the rails on right, and we'll go over that when we put the side panels in. Okay, now we're ready to put our side panels in. What you want to do is you look right here, and there's 3 push pins in here. You want to push those out from the back, slide them out, and just set them down. Okay, and the next thing you want to do is this is the pivot area. Okay, when the cover's back in the back position, this is the area that allows it to pivot over the back of the boat. Okay, so you can lift this up and down freely. Okay, so what you want to do is we use a hammer, but you can use a file or a pair of pliers or whatever you want. And what we do is we just lift it up, put that underneath so the pivot is up. Okay, this is your side panel. Now when you put it in there, you're going to want to make sure you've got it in the right position. You always want to make sure these 2 things are in the back, and this little thing with the wheel on here has got to be in the front. Now the front side is always the side with the tubes, and the back side is always the side with these X members. And what you'll do is you'll lift this up and just deposit it right inside of your rail. Okay, and just push it all the way back, and then you can take your hammer out, just pivot it back, take your hammer out and let it go down. And how we install these is we want to pull this first piece of tape off. Okay, and the 3rd one in goes into this first hole here, and you'll just slide that in. Okay, and then that's installed. And the second one, it's got a spring to it, so you can push it up and down. And you line that up, just slide that in, just like that. Third one, same thing. Okay, you just want to line up the hole, push that in, make sure it goes all the way through to the back. Come on and see the back. See, this pivot pin goes all the way through, and it comes right out the back, and it's got a little ball on it, a spring ball, so that it holds it in place. Okay, now you want to take the top tape off of here. Okay. Now if you come down to the end here, let me show you. As I was mentioning before, when you put the side panel in, you'll be able to see if you got your rail square or not. Okay, now you can see that this side panel is standing straight up, which is where you want it. So that means your rail isn't cocked out, or it isn't cocked in. Okay, now if this is leaning out like this, you may want to readjust your rail. And if it's leaning in like this, you may want to readjust your rail. Okay, this is how you can see if your rail is put on straight. So make sure it's always on straight, because once you get these together, you may have it leaning in or out with your bow tubes, and that's not a good position to be in. But there is ways to adjust it, and I'll show you how once we get there. Okay, now we're doing the other side. Now what I like to do after I get them in is I like to do what I call a little test drive. So what I'll do is I'll grab it by the bolt here, and just pull it down and make sure it has freedom of movement. There it is, we're good. Okay, now after we get both side panels on, what I like to do is spray the moving parts with a little bit of WD-40. Now this will also be contained in the maintenance portion of your video. What we do is we WD. Each one of these sections has two wheels at the bottom. Okay, so we'll just come in here and we'll squirt either side, just one little squirt, and also these sliding blocks. As you can see, when this moves back and forth, these sliding blocks travel up and down this tube. So what we'll do is we'll take and give it a little squirt there, you know, just on each one of these tubes. And that just helps everything move a little bit easier. Okay, and this is all part of your maintenance program that you'll see in your owner's manual. And what that does is that just frees everything up so it slides back and forth. Makes a lot of difference. So now I'm going to go do the other side. Okay, next what we need to do is we need to connect the two sides. Okay, and we do that using these bow tubes, what we call bow tubes. And this is a bow tube. And how it works is either end is bored out 2 inches on the inside, either end, so they slide right over top of the side tubes. Now since you put your bow tube on the back one on that side, you're going to have to make sure you get the back one on this side as well and slide it on, because if you get it on a different tube, it's going to be awfully hard to open or close. So you want to slide that on there. You see this is the same one on either side, and then you just do them consecutively. Okay? Grab the next one, slide it on the next tube. Might have to tap it on. Some of them, sometimes you get a sticky one. Okay. Right, now that we got all the boat tubes on, what I like to do is pull it out and give it a little test drive now that you got the two sides connected. You don't have a handle on it, so you're going to have to move both sides, you know, one at a time. Just move it down. Just make sure everything's moving freely. Pretty good. That's pretty good. And then what I like to do is I like to look down the tubes and make sure they're all right in line, because a lot of times these bow tubes, sometimes you can get a little different thickness, and what happens is when you bend them, they don't always bend exactly the same. Okay, so what I do, first thing I do is I look down and just make sure they're all in line. Now I see that number 1, 2, 3, 4 is kind of in a little bit. See this one right here? See how it's in a little bit? Okay, now you can adjust that by grabbing a hold of the tube and just pushing it out a little bit. See, now that's a little bit better. So in order for this to work properly, all these have got to be fully in line on both sides. Okay? Now I'm going to go look at the other side. Also, when you were putting on the rails, I told you if they were tucked a little bit in or out, there's ways to adjust it with your top tubes. Once you get your enclosure fully built, you can now. If you were looking down this and this was leaning in a little bit, you can take these and bend it out slightly. You know, you can't do a whole lot with it, but you can do it a little bit. If you notice that you got it on and it's sticky, look at your side panel arrangement. If it's sitting out, what happens is it's going to rub on that side of the rail. If it's sitting in, it's going to rub on the inside of the rail, so it's going to be sticky. Okay? And the only way to move these at all is by moving your bow tubes. Okay? So if this is sitting in like this, you can bend it out a little bit, okay? Just so you can get a good alignment that'll roll easy. I mean, don't go crazy bending it, but it's possible you can bend it out an inch or two, okay? And then that'll help you create the alignment that you need for these to roll. Because if your side panels are sitting in like this, it's not going to work. If they're sitting out like that, it's not going to work. They got to be perfectly square with the top in order to roll properly into the rails. Okay? You see these do. Okay? Now I always tell people, don't move this without the handle, but I'm just doing it to show you. See how they move? It's perfectly square. Okay? It's moving real nice. If it's moving real nice like this, you're good. Next we're gonna attach our handle and give it a little test drive. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to put the handle on. Now, at least for now, the handle comes in 3 pieces, so you have to put 2 side pieces on first and then connect the handle to the 2 side pieces. Okay, now on the back of the side handle, you'll notice that there's a hole. Okay, one side's got this little rubber thingy on it and the other side's got a hole. Okay, this hole is going to go right here and the second one in. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to take the nut off of it, okay, and then just put this over top, just like that. Screw your nut on. Okay, you don't want to put it on there tight because you want your handle to be able to move. Okay, so now you'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, you don't want it on too tight because you want it to be able to move. Okay, and then you just let these dangle, and then we'll have to get on the boat to actually put the actual handle on it. Okay, now we got the center part of the handle up here. It goes on just like this. What you want to do is just put one side on, and you'll notice this little rubber piece here. You want to put the handle on until it fits over top of that rubber piece. Okay, just like that. Not too far, but you want you want the rubber to be right at the bottom here. And then what I do, just to hold it into place, is I'll get some outdoor electrical tape and I'll just wrap it around there. Just to keep it in place, okay? Now, when you drill the hole for the bolt, you can either leave the tape on or take it off. It's entirely up to you. Okay, now we're going to do the other side. Okay, now once you got these three pieces together, what I like to do is I like to give it a little test drive, okay, just to make sure everything's going okay. So what I'll do is I'll pull it all the way up to the front, make sure everything pivots properly. Okay, yep, everything moves freely, and then what I'll do is I'll push it all the way to the back. Make sure everything's rolling good. Pivot it in the back position. Just to see, make sure we got good range of motion and all that, and then I'll bring it back and make sure everything's rolling properly. So everything looks good. Now what we're going to do, we're going to put our security straps on next. Okay, with your boat guard kit, you'll get two packages of security straps. Okay, one is going to be marked boat guard cover straps, and the other one is BG boot. Okay, the BG boot will go in the back. Boat guard cover straps will go in the front here. Okay, so since these go in the back, we're just going to set them back there, and we're going to open up this one. And what you'll find in here is you'll find a couple of small straps, short ones, and these are going to go right up here, sit right here, because those are going to go into your tune loops on the front, okay? And then you'll find two about this length, okay? And then what you want to do with those is take a hammer, tap off this front tube. There's a loop in it, okay? And you want to loop that right over. And this one will go on this side. Okay, and then you grab the other one, open up the loop, and this one is going to go on this side. Okay, then you want to put your tube back on the side, and then get your handy dandy outdoor electrical tape out, and you want to put this right on the corner, okay? And you want to tape that in place, and you're going to want to tape it like you want it to stay there. Okay, so I do a pretty good job, you know, you want it to stay right there. Then you'll do the other side. Okay, now we're going to put on the straps in the back. Okay, now you got your boot straps, your BG boot straps. Okay, and you want to open those up. And what you're going to have inside of here is you're going to have three of these things, and they're exactly the same. And each one of them is going to have a loop on the end. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to grab it and you want to orient it so the male part is on this side. Okay, just like that. So what you're going to do then It's going to be the third one. You're going to have the one in the back, then this one here, now this third one. And the reason why we use the third one is because this is the only tube on this whole cover that never moves. Okay, so these straps will just stay right in this same spot. You don't want to put it on this one or that one down there, because it's going to drag all across the boat. You want to put it right here on this one that doesn't move. Okay, and then you want to place this on here with the male part. There's one side with a male and a female, and the other side's just got a female. You want to orient the female, the one with just the female, so it's at the back. Okay, on all three of them. Okay, and what you do is you slide that one down here. Alright, now again, with the male and the female oriented on the inside, you want to lift this up, loop it on there, slide it over. Okay, and then you'll do the third one as well. Same way. Male and female on this side, pick it up, loop it, put it on there, okay? And then you'll replace your connection with your side tube, okay? All right, now there's going to be a black mark here in the center of the tube, okay? And you probably can't see it, but it's right here. The center one is going to go right on that mark. Okay, and then again you're going to use this outdoor tape to tape it on there like you want it to stay there. Okay, just like that. Now the other ones are going to be placed, you know, kind of more towards the side. Okay, but right about here is good. There isn't an exact placement for these two, but you want them spaced out pretty good, because there's going to be a zipper over this when they put the cover on. So you want these on the outside of the zipping range. Okay, now this one here you're going to put over here. Okay, fix those all in place. Now this last strap, it looks kind of like this. Okay, and what this is, it's just a handle. So when you pivot your cover in the back position, you can use this handle. You just take the male, put it into one of these females, and that's good. See, you got a handle, so when it comes all the way back, when you push it over the back 45 degrees, you have this handle that you can regulate it with. Okay, now the front ones, they have a snap on them. And what you'll do is, most boats have a tune loop here on the front of the tune. Some don't. And if they don't, you're going to have to get a self-drilling screw and screw it right through the rub rail. But most of them do. You know, so what you'll do is you'll just loop that through here and snap it. Just like that. Okay, one on this side, one on the other side. Just like that. And just snap it. Okay? Just like that. Okay, next we're going to put our handle strap on. Now the handle strap consists of two pieces of Velcro. This first one is just a sticky piece, and what you'll have to do is you'll have to pull this backing off of it, and then look at it. You'll want to put it on this very first tube section. Now you see this has got a blue mark on it. Some of them got black marks, some of them got blue marks. And what you want to do is you'll put it right there and just wrap it around, and that'll stick right onto the tube. Okay, the second piece of Velcro is this double-sided Velcro. Okay, and then what you're going to want to do is stick that around it. You're going to want to loop it around there once, and then bring it down and, you know, cut it at about 10 inches or so. Just cut it right here. Okay, now what that does is it holds your handle. So when you're ready to tip it over in the front, you can take your handle and wrap this right around it. Okay, it secures your handle to the rest of the frame. Okay, so when your handle's not in use, you'll want to wrap it up and secure it with the rest of the frame. Okay, so now that all this stuff is together, we're ready to put our cover on, our fabric cover. But what I like to do is before we get the cover on, I just like to what I call a test drive. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close it, and I'm going to start from the beginning and open it just like I was the user. and just make sure everything's smooth. Now this is what your frame should look like when it's completed. Okay? Now what the test drive consists of is we're just gonna run this frame through once and make sure everything's good. Okay, now first what we're gonna have to do, this is how your front straps connect to your tune loops. Okay? What you'll have to do is you'll have to release both of those. Just like that. And how we raise this thing is we come to the side, grab it by the front corner, and lift it up in the upright position. Now you'll notice this is the pivot. This is a pivot position right here. So when you lift it, you want to lift it with enough force to get it past that pivot area so it stands freely on its own. Okay, and then you'll enter the boat. Okay, now once you're on the boat, you'll untie your Velcro strap, releasing your handle. You'll bring the handle down to a 45-degree position because that's the best advantage to push at, and you'll just push it all the way to the back. Now if your handle, what we're looking for is we're looking for any problems, okay? If your handle pushes any harder than this, then something may be caught. Okay, so you watch both sides and you push evenly on either side. So you'll push it all the way to the back, like that. Reattach your handle. Okay, now you'll attach your security straps on either side. And what you'll do is your male and the female will be in front and just the female will be in back. Okay, you'll loop the female around the back and plug it into the front one, the male. Okay, and then you just pull that tight. You're going to act like the cover's on it and everything. Okay, pull that tight. You do the same thing on the other side. Loop just the female around the back. Plug it in and tighten it down. Okay, now your center strap is the handle. Okay, you got a handle here, and then you just push it off the back. Okay, now that's your boating position right there. Now you got your handle and you just lay it down. And then what I do is I'll look at the rail and just make sure everything's right. Make sure there's no obstructions, make sure there's nothing sticking out, and make sure there's nothing between the pivot and the bottom part of the rail. Because if there's some stuff in there, when you bring your pivot down, it'll set up so your wheels won't transfer into the next part of the rail. Okay? So everything looks good on this side. Everything looks good on the other side. So now what I'll do is I'll pull this back up in the upright position. Okay, notice down here at the rail that when this comes down, these two rails connect. And that's how this side panel transfers into the other part of the rail. Okay, now if this is sitting up like this, or if there's something under it, it's not going to transfer into the other part of the rail. So you have to make sure that's down, okay, so that the wheels can transfer. So now what I'll do is I'll unstrap these. Okay. Okay. And then I'll re-release my handle by unwinding this Velcro strap. Okay. And I'll bring it down to the 45-degree position. Now when I pull this open, what I like to do is use the palms of my hands, use a lifting pulling motion, or if you want, you can get on the inside of it and just pull it like this, whichever's easiest for you. And you'll want to pull it all the way down. You remember that pivot area we talked about right here in the nose cone? There's one on either side. So when you pull that back, you want to hit both of those at the same time so it pivots right in front of you. Okay, and then what you'll do is you'll rewrap your handle. You'll get off the boat and you'll just allow this to come down into its natural position. Now that's a perfect run through. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the cover up there and we're going to show you how to put that on. Okay, now we got the cover up here. So what we're going to do is you'll notice the cover is rolled up with the white side out. What you want to do, there'll be two rolls One will be a little one like that, and then the other one will be the rest of the cover. You want to start here at the first upright bow tube, and then just grab this, loop it over to the top, and then just keep unrolling it. Keep unrolling it until you get to the back upright bow tube. Okay, just like that. You want to even it out. Once you get up here, you'll notice there'll be two folds in it. You want to unfold either side. Now it helps if you have a guy on the other side because he can unfold the same time you are, but you know, you got to do what you got to do, right? So you unfold this side, you'll unfold the other side, and then you'll run underneath, go over here, do the same thing on this side. Just like that. Okay, now once you're up here, you'll notice that it's folded in half now. So in order to get it to cover the boat, you're going to have to unfold it. Okay, and then one side's going to come on this side, and you're going to have to push it over to make both sides equal. Get it up there, you'll line it up, and then you'll take the ends, flop them over the back in the front. Okay, now that you're inside, you'll notice that there's a series of zippers in here. Each one of these zippers is meant to go on one of these tubes. Okay? What you want to do is you want to push the 45 ones out like this and do those first, because if you don't, they're going to be awfully hard to do later. So I do the 45 first, and then I push it back, and then I'll come and do the front 45. Loop it right around the tube. And then zip it up. Okay, now that you got those two done, you're free to do the rest of them, one at a time. Okay. Okay, now you're going to notice the front and the back, the very front and the back tubes, each have 4 zippers. So you can zip it all the way around the front, all the way around the back. Now this is the back here. So what you want to do, start over here, loop that around. Zip it up, now do your side. Doesn't matter what sequence you do these in. Just as long as you do all 4. Okay, that zips up. Come over here to the other side. Just like that, and you do the front the same way. The front's a little bit more complicated because you got to move the handle, but it goes on just exactly the same way as this. Okay, now that we got all the zippered pockets done on the inside, we have to fasten the outside cover, part of the cover to the frame. Okay, and we do that by using these grommets right here, and you'll notice that on each one of them there's a corresponding washer and screw. What we're going to do is we're going to unscrew this, put the grommet over top of it, and then screw it back on. And then we'll have to Loctite each one of them. But first, what we do is we run around and screw them all on just to get the covers secured, and then we run around Loctite and tighten them up. Okay, we're only going to screw this in one thread because I have to come back and Loctite them all, so I leave them open. Now you'll notice that there's a plastic spacer on there. What this does is it slips right over top of that plastic spacer, just like that. And then we put the screw and the washer back on and screw it in there just a bit. And we go to the next one. Okay, now what we're going to do, now that we've got them all fastened, we're going to use a little bit of Loctite. We're going to put it on the screw and tighten that in so it stays in. These are barrel screws. So what they act like little axles, so things can still move, okay, but we need to Loctite the screw in there so it doesn't back out while you're using the cover. Okay, be generous with it, but not too generous, okay? And then once you get it in there, you just want to screw it on until it's tight. Now what I like to do is I like to put my hand around the back and feel it until the axle on the back actually turns, and then I know I've got it tight. Okay, and then we move on to the next one. Okay, now we're going to drill the hole through our handle and attach the handle all together, okay? And what you do is you use your drill bit, and you'll see where this handle overlaps the other handle. You want to get it right there on the meat, okay? Okay, and then you want to jiggle it around. Give yourself a little room to put the screw in. And you put the bolt in from the back. Have it stick out the front. Just for clearance issues. You don't want it in the back because it may scratch your boat on the way through when you're opening and close the cover. Then you get a 7/16 wrench and a 7/16 ratchet, and you can tighten that up. There we go. Do the same thing on the other side. Well, that's it as far as the installation goes. As soon as you get the handle secured and fastened, what I like to do is give it a last test drive with the cover and everything on it to make sure everything's good. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll release the two straps just like before, and then you'll lift up the corner just like before into a standing upright position. Get on the boat. Use your Velcro strap to unlock your handle. Pull your handle back into a 45-degree position and push it all the way to the back. Once it stops, reattach your handle. And then using the two side straps, just like we did before, you'll have the male and the female on one side, and just the female on the other side. You'll loop the female around the back, plug it in the front here, tighten it down. You'll do the same thing with the other side. Okay, everything tightens down well. And then of course you'll use your center strap as your handle. And as you push it off the back, you'll regulate it with your handle. Okay, and then you'll look on both sides just to make sure everything's right and clear. You have enough clearance and everything and no obstructions. Okay? And then you'll bring it back up to a 45 or to a 90-degree position. Okay? Look and make sure your pivots are flat with the rest of the rail so the transfer can be made. And then you'll undo your straps, release your handle again, bring it back to a 45-degree position, pull it forward. Pull it all the way forward until it pivots. Like that. Retie your handle and exit your boat. Let it drop down to the front. Dropping down to the front, you can reattach your front straps so it doesn't blow up. And that's it as far as the installation is concerned. Boat Guard Guy out.